The grand hall gleamed under chandeliers, polished marble catching the warm glow. Guests in evening clothes sipped champagne and chatted while a grand piano waited by the stage. At the instrument sat Claire Thompson, young, wealthy, and already famed for her playing. Her performance was graceful, practiced. Those around her seemed more impressed by her presence than by the music itself. Outside, on the cold stone steps, a man named Daniel Miller lingered with his dog Max. Years on the street had left him rough around the edges. Tangled hair, a wary beard, clothes threadbare. But there was a quiet dignity in the way he held himself. The music pulled at something buried in him. Long ago, his hands had known the keys. Tonight, hunger and memory drew him forward. Daniel and Max slipped inside. The room fell still as he entered. Conversation stalled into surprise, then into scornful laughter when he asked, simply, if he could play for some food. The reaction was sharp, but Claire paused, curious. She looked past the rags to the steady eyes that met hers and, without dramatics, told him to play. He approached the piano slowly. At first, the notes were fragile, but they grew into a melody that silenced the hall. What poured from his hands wasn't theatrical showmanship, it was all the things he had lived through. Loss, cold nights, small mercies, and the stubborn light that had kept him going. The room listened. Faces softened. Even Max settled at his feet. When the last chord faded, applause rose, genuine and surprised. Claire stood and walked over to him, sincere in her praise. She asked his name. He told her Daniel Miller. There were still skeptics among the guests, but Claire refused to let them define the moment. She invited him to sit and eat at her table. The household staff brought plates fit for a celebration. Daniel accepted a simple kindness with guarded gratitude. After that first night, something shifted. Daniel noticed a problem in the piano's middle register and offered to fix it while he was there. With a borrowed screwdriver. He knelt and worked carefully inside the instrument. The crowd watched, drawn by how he handled the tiny, exacting parts as if he were restoring something alive. When Claire pressed a key, the tone that bloomed back proved him right. Claire asked him to play with her. He demurred, asking instead to follow her lead. And so they played, her melody tentative and honest, his accompaniment steady and sure. The duet changed the room. It wasn't virtuosity for its own sake, it was two people making space for one another's music. Afterward, Mr. Thompson, all stern jaw and rules, could barely hide his attention. He agreed, cautiously, to let Daniel remain for a week. No press, no main wing keys, only a trial. That week became a routine. Daniel took the small guest room near the music library. He kept to a modest rhythm: morning tuning and repairs, midday lessons, afternoons fixing clocks and instruments that people brought to the house. He never asked for payment, he accepted room and food and, when pressed, said, "Pay the kitchen." The pantries filled in ways that stretched beyond the household, spilling food to local shelters and programs. Claire practiced with a new kind of patience. Daniel taught her simple, practical techniques: how to warm the hands, how to shape tone, how to give space to the music. Max, ever watchful, became a comforting presence in the corners of the house. The staff and household members, who once avoided the man in rags, began to linger at doorways just to listen. Rumors and tabloids circled. But Claire's statement was plain and true: a local pianist and technician is helping prepare for our charitable concert. No spectacle, no sensationalism. Mr. Thompson, who measured life in ledgers and formalities, found himself listening more than dictating. He started sending vans and making lists, but also, slowly, loosened the armor of skepticism. When the household's music director complained that Daniel was unvetted and risky, Mr. Thompson arranged a private audition. Daniel didn't perform for showy difficulty, he played with honesty. A clear prelude, a folk tune turned into something generous. He explained the mechanics of tone as if speaking about tools a carpenter might use. After a long silence, Mr. Thompson admitted what the rest already felt: he felt Daniel's music was serious in the best way. Offers followed. A modest stipend, a key to the workshop, permission to set hours, and a small cottage on the property. Daniel accepted without theatrics. He didn't vanish into comfort. He returned to the street to leave envelopes at the shelter choir, tools for a man who fixed guitars at the mission, and bread for those who needed it. It was a quiet, practical goodbye. As the weeks passed, the house opened more intentionally. Daniel's workshop light became a beacon for neighbors who needed clocks mended and instruments tuned. Claire and Daniel planned a charity concert to support literacy, a program that had once been a line on a meeting agenda and now had faces and a program. Children from shelters came for an hour of music and muffins. Claire sat on the floor tying laces and turning pages. Oliver, Claire's brother, learned to listen. Max learned the small, steady duties required of a dog who belonged somewhere. The night of the fundraiser arrived. The hall filled with people expecting polish and spectacle, and they left with something quieter and truer. On stage, Claire moved without armor. Daniel followed, attentive, steady. When she faltered, he steadied the phrase with a subtle support that let her find the line again. When they finished, the applause rose, not blinding, but warm and inevitable. Backstage, Mr. Thompson found Daniel and, without ceremony, admitted he had been wrong about what made a home safe or worthy. He offered Daniel a brass key on a leather cord, a workshop door key, and, if Daniel wore as well. "This isn't more," he said. "Fits ours becoming yours." Daniel accepted, and the change that followed was gradual and practical. His workshop grew busier. The literacy initiative took root in the ballroom on Tuesday evenings. He started a weekly free piano hour for kids from shelters, 1 hour of music and muffins. The household learned how to receive generosity without spectacle. Sometimes, on rainy nights, Daniel would play alone in the library. Claire would stand in the doorway and set a mug within reach when he finished. There was no dramatic declaration, only the steady work of living together and listening. In time, the house shifted from being an exhibit of wealth to a place that welcomed footsteps of all kinds. Daniel rose before sunrise sometimes and walked the edge of the lawn with Max, thinking about the teacher who had given him his start and the bench that had sheltered him. He oiled hinges no one noticed and tuned stubborn octaves into alignment. Then he poured a coffee, set out a bowl for Max, and began again. Keys, doors, and hands kept moving, opening, closing, forgiving. And Daniel, finally, felt at home.